Hi, I'm Eva Makovic, and you're listening to the Reader's Digest podcast, in which we navigate the woes and wonders of modern life with leading experts on the tools that you need to survive and thrive in 2019. On today's show, Anna Walker talks to Maggy Piggot about her new book, How to Age Joyfully, which explains why the process of getting older should be something to enjoy and celebrate.
Well, just start off by saying thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's a subject I feel so passionately about. I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I wondered if we could start by just speaking about why is now a crucial time for the world to learn to age joyfully?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is crucial, and it's becoming increasingly crucial because we're all living longer. I mean, increasing longevity is a global phenomenon. And I read an interesting statistic that in 20 years, the numbers of people aged 65 and over will increase by 40%. I mean, that's a huge increase. So if the world's going to have so many more older people, it is absolutely vital that that period of time in older age is not spent in ill health and dependence and unhappiness, but that we can all enjoy our later life and fulfill our potential. And another reason is because if we don't do that, our already heavily burdened and pressured NHS and social care, which is already suffering, I just wonder whether they'll be able to cope at all. So I think it is absolutely vital that we try and increase our health span, as I think they call it, to be as close to our lifespan as possible, so that we can actually add life to our years as well as years to our life.
Sure. And what sort of changes do you think need to happen to improve the happiness of this sector of society?
Oh, well, that is a huge, complex issue, a question. We could talk a whole podcast about what needs to be done, and I'm no authority on the bigger picture stuff, but I think changes need to happen right across society, and in fact, I think it starts right at childhood, because from what I've read, really a good education and having good life chances and a good job actually affects very dramatically how long you live and how well you live. So there are things that we can do right across the lifespan. The Centre for Aging Better has 4 requirements for living well and aging better, and they are good health, physical, mental, security of financial circumstances, social connections, and purpose. So on a public policy level, I think we need to look at those. My personal view is that we need to do a lot more on prevention, healthy aging, enabling people to live well rather than tackling the problems once people have all those chronic conditions. But there are other areas like age-friendly communities, working practices to enable older people to continue to work for longer, like flexible working, safe, accessible housing, and also tackling ageism, which is, I'm afraid, sadly prevalent. But I think from my personal point of view, what I've discovered over the years that I've been growing older, and I'm 68 next week, is that actually individuals themselves can make a huge difference to how well we age. It's in our hands to a large extent, and I think that one of the things we can do is to communicate that to a wide range of people and help people to achieve that of what they can do, as well as society at a more global level, making changes too.
You say you're 68 next week. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Is there anything that surprised you personally about the aging process and growing older?
I think the biggest surprise to me was that I've loved my life. I've always enjoyed my work, having a career, bringing up my 2 wonderful kids, despite not being in the greatest of health, I think I've accumulated a new medical condition with every decade that's passed. And I've now rattled with all the pills I take. But even though I've now got quite a few medical problems, actually I found in my 60s I'm now happier than I've ever been before, and that really has surprised me, because when I gave up work, which I did because of ill health, I was really depressed and felt I had lost really everything, my identity, my status and interest, challenge, my colleagues. And I didn't really think that 8 years down the line that I would be as happy as I am now. And what I found even more interesting and surprising is that the research backs that up, and that in fact research shows that there is this U-curve of happiness, that people are at their happiest when they're 16 to 19, then it sadly goes down and then comes up again, and then you become happy again after 65, and that continues. So I think that's wonderful, and I've certainly found it's the most wonderful stage of life, giving me time to spend more time with friends and family, to do new things, to find new passions. So it's been the best time. I think David Bowie it really summed it up. I love the quote which he has, which says that aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been. And I think that's really so true, and I've seen it in so many of my friends who are in their 60s and 70s who really have never been happier. And I think the other thing probably that has surprised me is how young I feel, that despite actually being nearly 68, I still feel sort of in my 30s, and old age always seems to be about sort of 20 years away, so at this rate I don't suppose I'll ever get old. I'll just hopefully get older but not old, and that's been surprising too, how young one can feel in one's late 60s.
Do you think there's anything that younger generations misunderstand about the ageing process? Yes. I think there are a couple of things probably. I think they feel it from people that I've talked to, my children and their friends and younger people I've met. I think they see it very much as a time of decrepitude and dementia and depression, dependence. And I think this is partly due because we're living far more segregated lives now. That in the generations back, families lived much more together, whereas now we seem to live much more separate lives. People don't mix so much, so I think a lot of young people don't mix that much with older people. And then again, I think that they fear it because all the portrayal of older age is so negative. Everything you see, and I thought that too before I became older. It was just that it was a depressing time that really is all downhill. And the sad thing is that this so-called, I think they call it the narrative of decline, is actually absolutely wrong, because most older people actually don't have mental impairments or cognitive impairments or even physical impairments. They are active and well. They may have some conditions, but generally speaking, they're well. And in fact, 80% of people over 80 do not have dementia. And the rate is actually not increasing, although people keep talking about the greater numbers, but I think that's because we're just so many more people are living to a much greater age. And the other area is very much that they don't know that how much, to go back to the earlier point, how much of how well we age is actually in our hands. And another staggering thing I found when I was researching for the book was Sir Muir Gray, who is a professor of public health and a guru in the NHS. And he said there is a biological process of aging, but actually its effects are relatively insignificant until we're in our late 90s. And that is just phenomenal to think that actually aging doesn't actually impact if you don't let it impact, and if you're fortunate enough to age well, that it really, you can go on till your late 90s much the same as you were before.
Yeah. So you also talk about in the book how it's never too early to start preparing for happiness later in life. What steps would you recommend to someone who's still of working age to prepare for a happy retirement or life after work?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is if you're enjoying life and enjoying your work, I wouldn't retire because an awful lot of people find their fulfillment and purpose in life from their job. So if you can continue, that would be a great thing to do. But I appreciate that there are an awful lot of people when they get to their 50s who would still like to go on working, but find that they can't get a job, and so it's not possible for everybody, or that they have to give up because of their health, or because of caring responsibilities, or even workplace discrimination. But there's another wonderful quote I found from George Burns, the comedian who worked until he was 100 when he died, who said, retirement at 65 is ridiculous. When I was 65, I still had pimples. And I just think he's lovely. He's one of my role models. But apart from going on working, if that suits you and you can, the other things I think I would say is save as much as you can, because we are all living longer, as I mentioned. Pension ages are going up, and I don't think people realise how much they do need to save in order to have sufficient money for when they retire. And as I mentioned, one of the 4 requirements for a good later life is financial security. So I think if you can do it, but again, it's so difficult for younger people to save, and in this day and age. Then the other thing, keep healthy. Follow the 8 steps that I've outlined in my book, because all of those things, the 8 steps, apply, I think, whether you're aged 20 or whether you're aged 80, and they'll all help you to age better once you retire. And I think probably the most important is keeping physically active. And the final thing I would recommend is a book, which my daughter's reading at the moment, called The 100-Year Life, written by 2 professors at the London Business School, Andrew Scott and Linda Grattan, which actually talks about how we're all going to live to 100 and what you need to do in order to prepare for the fact that we are all living longer. And it's a great read, and certainly I would recommend that to people to read it before they retire. And prepare to a certain extent, but then also go with the flow. And just see what you want. Don't over-plan for retirement, because you might find that you want to go in a completely different direction. Certainly I did. I'm not doing anything that I did before I retired, and I never thought that would happen, but my life has taken a completely different course now. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about getting older.
And coming back to the importance of being physically active that you mentioned there, do you have any advice for people who maybe aren't very physically active now and feel a little overwhelmed by the prospect of increasing their physical activity?
Well, it is difficult because we are leading so much more sedentary lives now, and it is absolutely vital that we do keep moving, because sadly inactivity can actually kill you, and it certainly shortens your lifespan, and it can cause all sorts of serious diseases. So it is so important to be physically active. I think for somebody who hasn't taken any steps and who really is very inactive, I would just say move more, just move a little more. Any activity is better than no activity, so just build it into your day naturally. Don't sit for hours and hours. There are some people apparently who sit for up to 12 hours a day.
Gosh.
And that's really, really bad for you. So get up every 20 or 30 minutes because it helps the body. So just move, walk. I think walking is fantastic. If you aren't a sports person, anybody can walk a bit, and it's easy, it's free, it's sociable. You can listen to music, you can go out with friends, you can go into nature, enjoy the scenery, and you can start really, really small. You can start with 5-10 minutes and then build up from there, and then you can build up the pace so that you walk more briskly, because actually we should be walking briskly, but to start with you can just do a little and slowly, because any walking actually helps. And then you could take the stairs instead of going up escalators or taking the lift. You can get a pedometer to help you measure how many steps you take in a day, get off the bus and stop earlier. And then once you've got a bit more confident and you're incorporating walking more and activity more in your day, then try and go for the recommended guidelines, which are everywhere, which recommend a certain amount, 150 minutes a week of moderate activity, or 75 minutes a week of vigorous activity, and they can be done in 10-minute bursts, so you don't have to go to the gym and run on a treadmill. So and pick something that you enjoy. I think that would be my absolute key advice, because if you don't pick an activity that you enjoy, you just won't stick at it, and it won't become an integral part of your life. And there are so many different things you can do, from gardening, swimming, and for me, of course, dancing is my activity of choice.
Yes, I was going to come on to this and ask you about how dancing has become so important for your sense of joy.
Oh, it's totally changed my life. I never danced until my late 50s, and then I discovered a local Latin dance class and took up that, and then moved on to Argentine tango, which I can't tell you is the most wonderful dance.
Oh, wow.
Did that for 4 years, and then moved on to ballet.
So 3 really different styles of dance.
Oh, I've tried everything. I've even done a hip hop class.
Nice.
For the over 60s, which I loved. If I could get into a regular hip hop class, I would do it. And I've done a bit of flamenco and contemporary. Just love it all. But there are so many different styles. You can find one that you like. And it has totally changed my life in so many ways. I mean, physically, I lost weight, I got fitter, I got more flexible, my heart rate improved. It just made me move better, made me more confident mentally. It made me so much more joyful. It helped socially. I've met so many wonderful people through dancing who also enjoy dancing, and I've now joined a performing company called Sage, and we perform. If I had thought when I was 40 that I would be on stage at a theatre dancing ballet, I tell you, I would have just laughed. But now I've actually performed. I'm hopeless. I'm still hopeless. I was hopeless. I'm a little bit better after 10 years, but I'm still not good. But anybody can dance. I mean, literally anybody. You don't have to be good, and it doesn't matter if you're not on Strictly. You can just enjoy it. And there are now classes for older people, Silver Swans for ballet, or Darcy Bustle's Didi Mix for exercise dance. There are classes for people with dementia. There are classes now springing up for Parkinson's. So even if you're disabled or whatever age you are, whatever your ability, you can usually find something where you can dance with other people. And if you can't, just put on some good music and dance around your kitchen. And I do that too. And it's just wonderful. It just transforms your mood. My mantra is you don't stop dancing because you grow old because you stop dancing. And I think it's so true, and I would recommend it to everybody.
Did it take any adjustment to start enjoying something for the sake of doing it rather than to be good at it? I wonder if that's something that comes with age, or if that's just a...
Yes, well, I think you're less worried about how you're perceived. I don't care that I'm no good, and I think you do get that sense of confidence when you get older that it doesn't really matter, and you just go out there and do it. You're not so self-conscious, and just have a go. Just have a go at anything and whatever you want to do. And I think it becomes easier to do that as you get older, because you think, well, your time is limited. If I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? So just go for it, and then you can find you enjoy it, and then gradually, very gradually in my case, you do get better, and you persevere and don't give up, and just keep at it, and eventually you hopefully will improve. But if you don't, it also doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's a Japanese word that you speak about in your book. I hope I'm going to say this right. Ikigai.
Yeah, I don't know. I've only read about it. I'm not sure I've heard.
I did look it up. So hopefully I'm getting that right. Which I believe means reason for being.
Yeah.
That's a concept that you connect to the fact that Japanese people have the longest life expectancy in the world. I wonder if you could tell me a bit more about that concept and how maybe our listeners can welcome that into their own lives.
Well, it isn't a very important concept. It's really about what makes you get out of bed in the morning, and it's vital to have a purpose. Again, it's one of the 4 requirements that the Centre for Aging Better has said, having a purpose in life. And I think one needs it quite often, as I think I mentioned. You get it from your job when you're younger, or bringing up your kids, but it can be difficult once you've retired, because you may have lost that, kids have left home, you've retired, and you sort of think, well, what am I going to do now for the next 30 years, hopefully? But it's a wonderful time to actually try and go out there and find your purpose, and it's possible. You can try new things. You can find out what you want to do, and think about what you like doing as a child, and perhaps have another go at that, or things you always wanted to do but you never had the time or the money to do it. Research, find out things you enjoy. And there's just so many things: volunteering, helping friends, helping family, travel, helping out in your community, doing sports, physical activity, creative activities. They're incredibly good for you. Singing or painting. And they will all give you a sense of purpose. It doesn't have to be a job, but it can be anything. I mean, my dance gives me a sense of purpose, working for the next performance and hoping I'm not going to screw up on stage. So I think it's never too late to find what you want to do and be, and you can look on the internet or discuss with other friends what they enjoy doing, or read and find something that gives you that sense of fulfillment. And I think for a lot of people in later life, it's giving and helping others, and that's wonderful. And that's one of my 8 steps is giving. And I think we have the time when we're older and the experience to be able to do that.
Sure. A lot of the suggestions you mentioned there have a very social aspect to them. I think for many people, a fear about getting older, and especially a fear about retirement, is isolation or loneliness. Do you have any sort of words for people that maybe want to try and keep isolation at bay during retirement, are worried about it?
Well, absolutely. Although loneliness actually affects people at every age, and in fact young people, there's a problem about loneliness in younger people, which surprised me. We're suffering a loneliness epidemic apparently. But I think, as you say, when you get older, there are more challenges with your leaving your job, your family, perhaps living far away, you have health issues that can make you less mobile, or being digitally excluded. So but it is vital for us to keep socially connected, because it's very bad for us if we don't. Apparently it's as detrimental to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Gosh.
So it's really important to get out there. Tips, well, connect. Just do whatever you can to keep in touch with your family, your friends. Still see your work colleagues. I still meet up for lunch with my colleagues from work from 8-9 years ago. We regularly meet for lunch. Find a shared interest, classes in a topic that interests you, that will introduce you to other people. That's where organisations like Open Age, which is a charity I'm involved with for older people, is just so brilliant. And U3A, these organisations that bring people together for activities which knock so many of these things on the head, like giving you a purpose, enabling you to grow, and also socially connecting people. So there's a raft of things you can do in volunteering is another one. Charities, getting involved in charities, and the internet. I think people think, oh, the internet and social media is not for older people, but it actually can be a huge resource for connecting people. It's not a substitute for one-to-one meeting, and which is crucial, but it can add huge values if you can learn to be on Facebook or Twitter. You can connect with friends and family across the world. You can find out about your interests. I've started a Twitter account, and I was amazed how much it brought me in touch with other people that I've actually met. It's all about aging joyfully, and that is a huge resource for connecting. Forums on the internet. If you have a health condition, there are health forums that you can tap into, which will connect with other people who might help and give you support. So there are loads of ways. Dating agencies, traveling, solo holidays. Oh, the list is fairly endless of what you can do to get out there. But it does take bravery, and it takes a bit of courage to get out there, and it's not easy for everybody to do that. I appreciate that, but just being friendly to people at the supermarket queue or when you're waiting for the doctor, it's amazing what that can do. If you just say hi to somebody next door to you, it can lift your mood and you might find a new friend. So start small and get a friend to help you.
We live in this world of constant information overload. I mean, you've spoken about some of the positives of social media and the internet, but on the flip side, of course, it does mean we're constantly in touch with news around the world, and often this is negative news. How can people sort of try to become more positive in a world that sometimes feels like it's trying to make us worry all the time?
Yes, well, I think one should switch off social media. The news, I'm afraid to say I don't listen to the news a lot now. I try and just watch and listen to things that are positive. I've given up all serious and depressing films now. I just go to things like the exotic Marigold Hotel because I think we need more joy in our lives. So, and if you have a positive attitude to aging, research has showed you can live up to 7.5 years longer than if you have a negative attitude. So it really pays off to be more positive. I think that you can certainly help yourself in the way you think. You can become more positive. Only about 25% of low optimism is inherited, so the rest of it is down to you, and you can take steps by trying to focus on the positive, ignoring all this ageism and negative stereotypes that there are. Think about all the good things that about aging, role models, associate with positive people who lift you up and don't sort of drain your energy. Ban talking to yourself negatively. If you catch yourself talking negatively, challenge it and say, why? What's the evidence? And will it really matter in a year's time? So there are lots of things in thinking, like cognitive behavioral therapy, which changes the way you think. But there are also actions you can do to make yourself feel more positive. I mean, exercise is absolutely, going back to that, is one of them. But things like making sure you sleep well, meditation, being mindful, being grateful for what you have, and just accepting that life can be hard. It can be really difficult. I've had some really seriously we were discussing earlier, but I've had some really difficult times in my life, and that's going to happen to everybody, but those times do pass, and most things get better. And I think you have to focus on what you can change and what you can control, and try and let go the things that have happened that are difficult and hard, and try and just be in the moment and enjoy life, because you're not going to be here forever, and there's just so much that we can be grateful for in our lives now, that if we just look around, just a sunny day or reading a book or listening to a comedy can uplift your mood, and dancing is great for making you feel positive.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Maggie. Really appreciate
pleasure,
it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And How to Age Joyfully is available in all good bookstores.